All right, 1320 WILS back on your morning wake-up here as we roll through the week. The federal government has now informed election officials in 21 states, so that's nearly half the states of this union, that hackers were targeting their systems before the presidential election of 2016. This comes, give or take, a year after the U.S. Department of Homeland Security first said states were being targeted by hacking efforts that could be connected to Russia. The states that told the Associated Press they'd been targeted, including some of the battleground states here, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, even Wisconsin. Others that were confirming overall included big states like California and Texas, Michigan not on this list. But what does it mean? You know, the fact you were targeted, were you compromised? Does one necessarily beget the other? Let's talk about it this morning with cybersecurity analyst and attorney who specializes in all things tech and data, Shawn Tuma, back on the show. Shawn, welcome back and good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Dave.
So is it, does one go part and parcel with the other? I mean, I know our state government. I work with state government. We had hackers and attackers from the outside going after systems 24/7, 365, and you keep swatting them back, you know, like Wonder Woman with those bracelets. But being a target doesn't necessarily mean you have been compromised, does it?
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, like you said, 24/7, states, companies, we as individuals are all being targeted. That does not mean you're compromised. And in this case, they confirmed there were no hacks, actual accesses to voting machines, and no votes had been changed or manipulated.
Would it, is it the, I've always wanted to know the answer to this, the fact that in our patchwork quilt of 50 states that we have different voting systems and electronic machines and et cetera, does that patchwork quilt give us actually an air of defense against this that maybe we wouldn't have if it was uniform?
Certainly. You know, one of the things we recommend in cybersecurity is oftentimes diversification or segmentation by having, you know, like the hull of a ship, where you don't just have one big compartment, but a bunch of small ones. That way, if part of it's compromised, it doesn't sink the whole ship.
Yeah, you lock off the those bulkheads. You lock them off, and your ship stays afloat.
That's right. And with the different states, you now have to target all the states individually instead of one massive system.
So we don't have that. We are, again, as I mentioned, a patchwork quilt, but that doesn't mean we're not vulnerable here. Where do the big vulnerabilities lie? Are they in the bigger states? Are the smaller states, the states that have more money that they throw at this? Or is there any rhyme or reason to it in your mind, looking at it, you know, from the data side?
You know, Dave, the real question is, how do we make our computers more secure? And we love the efficiency of computers. We now need to accept the responsibility of securing them. And to answer that question, I think the states that have more resources to devote to having updated current voting systems and having the resources to implement the proper cybersecurity patching and updating to the machines, those are going to be the ones that are better off than the ones that don't have the resources to do this.
Well, that makes sense overall. But let's take it out. Let's broaden this out, because let's take it from hacking the voting system to influencing an election using the amazing algorithms that exist now to try to put together a package and a plan that would attack the essence of who we are in the United States. That is something that's fair game out there. Big tech is getting kind of a shot across the bow by both right and left. Is it fair in your mind? Is it overdue?
I think it is overdue. You know, for far too long, we as a people, our companies, and those who sell the products have benefited by making, huge gains in what we've been able to do, or the profits from these devices. And now we really need to double down on our efforts and reprioritize to focusing on the security as much as we focus on the functionality and the convenience.
I think for a long time in big tech, there has been, and this goes back to the 90s in Silicon Valley, the idea, which a lot of hardware based at that time, that Shawn, was either lead follower or get out of the way. And I think in recent years, by some younger big tech folks, it's been, or go away. Hey, just go away because you're holding back progress. The idea of hitting a pause, at least to pause and reflect, is, are we doing this the right way? And, is this going to lead to our own demise if we're not a little more careful? These are good questions to at least pose and ask, are they not?
They're great questions, Dave, and you're helping me think through things on a much bigger scale as I'm listening to your questions. Yeah, this is a wake-up call to us as a nation. We have focused on the, security is not a cost center. It's something people don't like because it slows down progress. But look, a ransomware attack on a company brings the company to a complete halt because they no longer have access to their data or their systems. This is happening all the time around the country.
Exactly.
We need to wake up and realize security goes part and parcel with convenience and productivity.
They should not be mutually exclusive. I mean, are we not learning any lessons? Look at the recent Equifax breach. I mean, there are things we can be learning here, but I also think there are things that maybe we should have known in advance, and maybe some did know, but they're like, you can't slow down progress. Well, I get that, but make it smart progress, make it good progress, something that's solid, that you've got a foundational base instead of quicksand. And I wonder about some of these things. I mean, I don't profess to have the answers, but I'm just asking some questions here.
Well, questions are where to start. And, Dave, I've been using an analogy recently to try to help business leaders understand the importance of security. And what I tell them is, if you were driving up to your company building in the morning and saw someone with an 18-wheeler trying to ram it through the front door, what would you do? You would immediately get on the phone, find out who needs to be involved, and say, get this stopped right now, because you see it with your eyes and you can feel it and touch it. With cyber, the threat is every bit as real and significant as what I just described, but you can't see it. You can't feel it or touch it. It's invisible. And so we choose to ignore it and not prioritize it. It's time for companies, and, Equifax, their lessons are just starting, I think, from this incident.
Yeah, their CEO of Equifax stepping down. That's not nothing.
But their lessons are the same that apply to the voting system. When you have something that's sensitive and important, you have to know attackers are going to be trying to get in, anticipate it, prepare for it. And those same lessons apply to us as individuals and to our companies.
No.
It's time to wake up.
Absolutely. Makes sense overall, and rather than upsetting the apple cart, slowing down progress or slowing down e-commerce and the ability to conduct business and transact even data, maybe you'll end up being a hero in the long run, because you're going to be the one. You're going to be the one that lit the warning, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and there shouldn't be a mindset that people who do this are slowing us down or holding back anything. These are fair questions, I think, to ask overall. The federal government, though, has been telling election officials that the systems were targeted. 21 states, and some of these were big states. Michigan, not amongst those, but possibly connected to the Russians. They were definitely trying to hack unsuccessfully. That has nothing to do with the separate issue of influencing the election, and that's a very real one indeed. Shawn Tuma is here, cybersecurity analyst, attorney, specializes in computer data. We're talking about big tech out there as well. Always good to have you on, Shawn. What's the website?
www.ShawnETuma, ShawnETuma.com.
Always good to have you on. Thanks for being here.
The federal government has told election officials in 21 states that hackers targeted their systems before last year's presidential election. The notification roughly a year after U.S. Department of Homeland Security officials first said that states had been targeted by hacking efforts possibly connected to Russia.
Well, attorney and cybersecurity analyst Shawn Tuma joining us on the Kogo News Live line. Good morning, Shawn.
Good morning.
Well, did the hackers actually do anything or just try, or do we even know?
From what we know and what we've been told, they did not do anything. They tried. They scanned the systems much like a burglar would do, kind of trolling a neighborhood, looking for open windows, open doors, unlocked cars, that kind of thing. But from what we know, there was no penetration of the systems, and no votes were changed or altered in any way.
Now, we've heard that a lot of voting machines, electronic voting machines, are vulnerable in their security. At this point, what has to happen? Do we go back to paper and hanging chads? I mean, it seems like everybody's getting hacked.
Sure, that's a great question. The answer is all computers are vulnerable at some level. None are 100% secure. Does that mean we go back to paper ballots? I don't think so. Computers bring efficiency to everything. And we like them because of the productivity and the ease and the convenience, but we've neglected the responsibility side for far too long. And that responsibility is to secure them as well. What we really need to do is now double down on our efforts and make it a priority to secure our computerized voting equipment and these systems and make them much more secure and more resilient so that in the future, we can trust and rely on them and know that they're going to be a very, very difficult target to penetrate.
Yeah, but how? Because, you look at Equifax and, 100 million people or more affected. What are security specialists getting wrong here?
Well, with the Equifax matter, it was a failure to install an update, a system update, which is something we do on our personal computers at home. Most of the breaches we see are failures to do what we call basic cyber hygiene. The problem with a company like Equifax is the scale at which it has to do it, or with our voting systems, the scale at which they have to be done. That means we need proactive systems and programs in place that make this a continuous process of always updating, always securing, always reanalyzing and assessing our vulnerabilities, because the hackers are doing that all the time. They're constantly updating their tactics, changing, and they're persistent. They never stop. So we have to match that force with an equal force.
Now, Shawn, this is not new information that you've just given us. So what in the world is the matter with all of these companies who keep not patching and not updating their security systems?
Usually what I see as an attorney who helps them through these problems is budget and will. If the people in the IT departments and the security departments typically know what they need to do and they want to do the right thing. They don't have the budget to do it, and they haven't been given the resources from management and the board of directors. And the analogy I use is if management and the board drove by their building in the morning and saw someone with an 18-wheeler truck trying to bash it through the front door, they would put a stop to it immediately because they see it. They don't see cyber, so they pretend it's not there, but the threat is every bit as real and even more devastating to the company when it happens. They've got to make this a priority.
All right, Shawn, thank you very much. Shawn Tuma, attorney and cybersecurity analyst, joining us on the Kogo News Live line.
All right, today a big primary in Alabama as Luther Strange, who is being backed by President Trump, Mitch McConnell, and the Washington establishment, is going up against Judge Roy Moore. Judge Roy Moore right now has a double-digit lead in Alabama, but it could go all to pot if the election is hacked. And apparently, notifications been sent out to several states that previous elections have been hacked. We are joined by Shawn Tuma this morning on Memphis Morning News. Shawn, like up to 21 states got notification from the feds?
Yes, this is a confirmation of a lot of what was suspected and talked about a year ago. But I do want to make one very important point, and that is when they said these systems were targeted, that means they were being scanned, somewhat like a burglar, circling a neighborhood. they were not actually hacked, and no votes had been altered in this process.
Now, do we think this is something that the Russians are doing? Is this just a group of hackers having a little fun? Who are they suspecting is involved in this kind of scanning or targeting of certain election results or election systems?
The only name that has been released has been the Russians, and it hasn't been necessarily by the federal government, but it has been by the states who were notified. The federal government kept pretty quiet about what it disclosed, but whenever individual states were contacted, they indicated that it was the Russians that were scanning their systems.
Shawn Tuma joining us this morning on Memphis Morning News, cybersecurity analyst, attorney, specializes in computer data. Shawn, what has been the response? Not only that, last few weeks we've had issues with Equifax as well. It seems like all of our computers are seemingly attempts are happening all the time that we may not even know about.
Yeah, you're right, Tim. I mean, this is the new normal. This is a fact of life. Computers make things very efficient, but they also have vulnerabilities to them, and they require we have to be responsible in how we use them. And that means not just using the advantages of them, but also taking care to make sure they're secure and updated. Many times they're not, and that's how these hacks happen into any computerized device, whether it's voting systems or Equifax or the Securities and Exchange Commission.
We work hard to protect our information the best we can. And we heard about, even though Tennessee is not on this list, we heard about Shelby County not completely wiping off some kind of card or computer that ended up somewhere else of an old voting system. So you got information there as well. It's like you can do your best, but you can only do so much when everybody's got your information.
Well, that's exactly right, Karen. Data is very portable, and it doesn't go away as easily as many people think it does. And, this is a new world for us because data is intangible. It's invisible. We don't see it. And so it doesn't trigger us, in our minds to think about removing it and protecting it many times the way we would something more tangible. And so we have to adopt the way we're thinking to a new standard and to always be thinking about this digital world that is very real, even though we don't see it.
All right, Shawn, thank you so much for joining us on Memphis Morning News. Wow, all those states notified of possible election hacking. Have yourself a good day, and thanks for joining us here in Memphis.